I wanna try something with you guys real quick. I'm noticing, and this is, I'm not going to move forward in the definition right now, but this is something that I notice a lot of you are having trouble with. And it's deriving meaning from the nodes themselves. And it's going to be very, very important now that we're transitioning out of me just walking you through developing a whole definition. And now we're going to get into you guys generating ideas and then following through on those ideas. Okay, so you're going to need to know, how do I pull in a node that I don't know everything about and figure out how it works? So I'm just going to kind of pull a different one in here, and I guess we'll figure it out from there. So under curve, I'm going to go to primitive, and I'll do, let's try by arc. Okay, so this one looks rather complex, right? It might be a little crazy, but let's read it and try to understand how it works. All right, so I mentioned everything flows from left to right. I have my input values on the left. That's everything that it needs to generate the items that are on the right. So reading the description, it says, create a by arc based on endpoints and tangents. Okay, so do you guys know what endpoints are? It's the 2 points at the end of a line. And tangent is what? If you guys can't answer what a tangent is, then you guys really need to brush up on your vocabulary too. But that's a separate thing, okay? So a tangent is the point, it's the, basically if I draw a circle, I'm doing this on the board here, if I draw a circle,
oh, I remember, oh, it's on the side, it's like when, oh, it's a command in Rhino.
It's the, it's not a command in Rhino, it's a trigonometric function. So but graphically, what it comes out to be in a physical implication is the perpendicular angle to any line from the center point to the perimeter of a circle. So if I draw a line from the center point to the perimeter of the circle,
the perpendicular thing, yeah, it's in geometry, I remember that.
It's perpendicular to that line. And it goes like this. Okay, and so for the sake of those of you guys who are, I guess, watching it on the video again at some point, tangent, it looks like that in graph form, but in terms of geometric applications, this is essentially what a tangent is. So you draw a line from the center point to the perimeter, and it is the perpendicular line along that point. Right here, there you go, tangent, radius, perpendicular. Okay? So, that's what this is doing, is it's taking a curve, you can kind of see a little diagram of it. It's taking a curve and it's saying, all right, give me a point and a tangent, and I'm going to compute a line between them. So the S is a start point. That part's easy. So what's TS?
Start tangent.
Okay, but in your own words, what does that mean?
First point, or the first line, or the end point.
No. Read the description. It's right here.
Oh shit. Start on the bisect. By arc.
Right. But it's what kind of geometry? It's a vector. So you guys need to practice doing this. You need to look at your context clues and figure out what you need to give it. You need to give it a vector. And not only that, you need to give it a vector that's associated with the first point. All right, so what's E? Right. And then naturally, TE is going to be the vector that's associated with that. Yeah. So,
Ratio.
what's that?
What's the ratio?
ratio of bi-arc segment weight. It's probably the measure of magnitude. Let's test it out. So if you don't understand how it truly works, like right now, I don't quite know what that means by looking at it. So let's test it out a little bit. I'm going to go in the top view. I'm going to drop in 2 points in space. Then I'm going to assign them some vectors, right? And then I'm going to test out what ratio does. So I'm going to do a point here and a point kind of here. Looks good to me. 2 points. And I'll go to params and drop in some points. So I'll set 1 point to that. Set 1 point to that. And so this is going to be my start point. This is going to be my end point. I'm going to need to give it vectors. And so in order to test it, I can pretty much use any vector I want. So I can start with the y-axis on one of them, positive y-axis. And I could use, say, negative y-axis on the other one. So what I'm doing is I'm simulating the diagram. See how I've got the y-axis going up here, and then I've got the y-axis going down there? I'm simulating that because obviously they made that diagram there for a reason, right? It pretty much shows you how the tool functions. So I'm going to go to vector, and I'm going to use unit y. The default value is just going to be 1. That's fine. I'll plug that in here. And I'll do another unit. Whoops. Another unit y, except I'm going to reverse it. And I'll put it in there. Actually. What's that? Under vector, reverse. So I don't quite understand what's going on here, so I'll plug in the original vector there. That's funny. Reverse put it in the opposite direction, or in the same direction. That's odd. Anyway, so we could use unit y, and that's what it does, so it functions that way. Anyway, so let's see what the ratio does, right? It's a ratio of bi-arc segment weight. So 0.5 is probably somewhere exactly in the middle of the line. I'm thinking it might have something to do with that right there. Let's look at our outputs. We have a bi-arc, so that's split somewhere. The segment of bi-arc curve and another segment of bi-arc curve. So that tells me something as well. What does that tell me? What does it tell you that there are 2 segments of a bi-arc curve?
2 parts. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, but what does that tell you potentially about ratio, right? I'm musing here. I'm trying to figure out what it is. What do you think the ratio could be?
Right now they're the same, right? It's the same ratio.
Right, but what do you think the ratio's function is? Take a guess, and then let's test it.
I don't understand the question. Scale.
A scale? Scaling the geometry? Possibly. What else do you think it could be? Based on your context clues that you see over here on the output. All right, well, let's play around with it and find out then. Okay, so if it's a ratio, that means that it probably should be a range of 0 to, say, 1. So I'm going to make a slider, 0, 0.55 to 1, and I'm going to plug that into ratio. Okay, so now it's 0.55. If I slide this back and forth, let's see. 63.94, 63.94. It's still halfway. That's funny. Curve. So let's go to params, curve. Huh. I would have thought that it would have done something. Bi-arc segment weight. Anyway, well, we could figure this out. So if that's not telling us anything right there, we can just basically Google it. So if you don't know what the ratio is, let's figure it out. So ratio of by arc in Grasshopper. Nope. Ratio, not here. Not coming up with much. Nothing there. All right, so I didn't pick a very good one for finding out the last function, but outside of the ratio being pretty elusive in how it works, the rest of it is pretty clear, right? I mean, we put in a tool and we broke it down to all the input values, and then we started to basically just look at what the output values are, and now we can see that all it takes is vectors, some points, and then you've got this arc that you've divided up, and then you can create your curves with it. You can divide it into two, or you can get one singular interpolated curve. I want to try something too. I just want to test if I bake this, and if I grab that and I turn on my control points, what is the distance from here to there? Feet. That's funny. And if I change the magnitude of the vector, I wonder if that's going to do something. So all these things are things you can try. So I'll make this from 0 to 10, plug that in here. No, that doesn't do anything either. Thought it might. All right, well, anyway, so that's the start to how you can basically troubleshoot this. So what that means for us is that when you look back at this one, which is giving us a lot of trouble, right? We have repeat data with a panel, or we have the random tool with something. The information that's there tells you what you have to do. Okay, so random says it's going to generate a list of pseudo-random numbers, right? So it has an R input, which is a range, which comes in the form of a domain, right? And it's all telling you that right here. Domain of random numeric range. Okay? And then N, number of random values. So if you're troubleshooting this and I ask you the question, what is the relationship of N to R? What is your answer? You guys are far too quiet about this. What is the relationship of N to R?
R is a range of numbers and N is just one.
You answered what you have to give it. That's correct. But that's not what the relationship is. What does N do for R? One is a range, one is an amount of numbers.
It gives it the randomness?
What's that?
It gives it the randomness of numbers? Or
Sort of. All right, so I have a range of, so let's say I set my range. My range is 10 to 50. Now, what is the relationship of N to R? Hmm? 10 to 50. That's all I've got so far. I need to define n as something. N is the number of... What is it? Divides it? No.
Any number between 0 to 50.
Not any number, not any singular number. Guys,
You said 10.
come on, guys. It's a range of 10 to 50. What does n do? It tells you what it does. Read the description.
Just defines the value.
Not the value singular. Values. Plural. That's a hint. Read your context. So what is it doing?
You define the value between 10 and 50. You said 50 or what?
50. It doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on the numbers I give you. Think about the general ideas. That's the more important part. All right. I'm going to walk you through this. It defines how many numbers exist between that range.
So 40.
No. It's a randomizer. You tell it how many numbers it's going to randomly generate between 10 and 50. So if I give it 10 numbers, they can be any 10 numbers between 10 and 50. And that looks like this. And I'm going to do it really fast here because I think this video is running long. You set up a domain, which is a range of 2 numbers. 10, 50, right? So that's my minimum amount and my maximum amount. And I want the same, I want 10 numbers generated. That produces this. There are 10 numbers in this list. All of them are between 10 and 50. So I'm not kidding you when I say everything you read on a component is a context clue to how it operates. Get used to reading it. Get used to reading it with intent. Pay attention to singulars and plurals. Pay attention to the vocabulary it's using. Because a range is different than a sequence. Sometimes we use them interchangeably. Is different than a set. Is different than a list. Is different than a pattern. Everything is very specific. Anyway, I've talked a lot about this. I just want you guys to be more intentional about what you're reading.